Hello and welcome to More Than the Score. I'm Tony Moclair and I'm joined each week here on Isolation TV by the great man Troy Zantuck, the walking sports almanac, a man with more figures in his head than, hang on, who's the guy who lived in the mansion and published the Playboy magazine?
Yeah.
I'm only saying figures because, figures. You know what I'm talking about, Troy Zantuck.
Oh, I do, and thanks for that wonderful introduction. Most underwhelming, I must say, there, Tony. Hugh Hefner was the guy that you were looking for. What a great way to start off the show.
I resent that. I was clean shaven when I started to craft that fine intro.
I know, mate. You're looking very much like a George Michael wannabe at the moment with that substantial stubble growth.
Thank you. And just careful how you go with that comparison with George Michael. That makes you my Andrew Ridgeley.
Wow, Andrew Ridgeley. Yeah, that's a good comeback, I got to say. I deserve that.
All right. You're the guy bouncing behind me in the background as we do Top of the Pops, playing a guitar that isn't plugged in. Anyway, you are not here for show, Troy Zantuck. You are the meat on the bone of More Than the Score because you bring the statistical and intellectual heft to this particular vodcast on Isolation TV, where we talk about the glory days of the AFL, VFL, and I guess our memories of it as great fans of the game. And this week, and I'm really looking forward to seeing who some of your choices are, that's for sure, we're talking about non-Victorian players who have played in the VFL, AFL.
Yeah, non-Victorian players who've become absolute champions, Tone. So I reckon this has got 2 shows in it. I agree. Obviously, we'll do part 1 today and part 2 next week. I just think there's an enormous amount of talented players that have come across the border and reaped the rewards in the VFL and become absolute superstars.
Troy, what does it say about the VFL that it has always been able to attract the cream from really excellent competitions like the Waffle and the Sandful?
Well, the VFL is the piece de resistance, and it was back then. And obviously, players that excelled in the Waffle, the Sandful, the ACT League, Queensland, New South Wales, and Tasmania. What a great breeding ground for the superstars Tasmania was. You had to really prove yourself as the real McCoy, and the VFL at the time was the place you needed to be.
Well, as you say, and you throw in Northern Territory there, and we could go international players, but we're not going to do that today. We're just going interstate players. They have added, it's incalculable what they've added to the VFL, and it may have missed people who watch this regularly that I'm something of a Carlton supporter. And
everybody would have missed that. I'm glad you brought that up, Tone.
Probably missed that. It's always good to maybe just remind people. But, I cannot think of a premiership in my time watching the club that would have been possible without interstate players.
And who were some of your favourites coming over the border that shone for the Blues?
As a kid, Bususto is, and Kenny Hunter, those two were just incredible to watch and just great players. And I was raised with this arrogance, and I know people hate this about Carlton, but when it's your club doing it, it's a wonderful thing to be able to travel around Australia with a checkbook and just lure the greatest players from hither and yon with a checkbook and have them then play at your club was always a magnificent thing. But those are the 2 that really stand out for me. Kenny Hunter, and you're both from WA. And that is not saying anything, of course, about the great Stephen Kernahan, absolutely magnificent sticks. And Craig Bradley, of course, from South Australia. They were the 2 of the trio with Peter Motley, and we know what happened there. Mott's considered by the cognoscenti, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, as the pick of the bunch, which is really, really saying something, given the honours bestowed on Stephen Kernahan, premiership captain twice, and Craig Bradley, the fact that he went on to be a 350 game player, something like that. So the fact that Motts was considered the pick of that, I'm not sure what your take on that is, Troy.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter Motley, the Motley name, a famous name in South Australia. Peter Motley, wonderfully blessed, beautifully balanced, highly skilled. And as you say, the cognoscenti, the guys in the know, rated Motley the better of Kernahan and Bradley, as you said, which just speaks volumes. But just on Craig Bradley, started his career at Port Adelaide. I think he played about 89, 90 games with them. Then he come over to Carlton, played 375 games, Tone. Wrap your head around that. 247 goals. He won the BNF at Port Adelaide in 82, 84 and 85. And that's not bad. So that showed prospective VFL clubs that this kid could play. But there's an interesting rider with Craig Bradley that Essendon actually signed him in 1981.
Wow.
But didn't come over because he thought he needed to ply his trade a little bit longer with Port Adelaide. So he stayed at home. And that was a blessing in disguise for most Blues supporters, where obviously he was part of those flags in 87 and 95. He won three BNFs at Carlton also.
That's on the plus side of the ledger. I found out this week, and I had no idea about this story, Troy, that Johnny Platten, speaking of SA players, had all but agreed to play for Carlton, and there was there were inducements offered and accepted, I believe, but there was a late change of heart, and we know the rest of that particular story.
Yeah, well, Johnny Platten, wow, recruited from Central Districts in South Australia. What a wonderful rover he was, one of the all-time greats. As you said, signed, sealed and delivered, we thought, to go to the Blue Baggers. But Hawthorn snared him, where he played 258 games. He kicked 228 goals, 4 flags, the 87 Brownlow, and as I said, one of the most dynamic rovers ever to play the game.
I'm just going to point out, we did not discuss that before we commenced recording. I threw John Platten in there as a curveball, and Troy Zantuck, you were able to come up with career stats. That says a hell of a lot about you, my friend. Now, I'm keen to know... No, take it in the spirit it's intended.
I appreciate that. But when you're talking about legends of the game, stats come to mind pretty quickly.
Well, both impressive, let me just tell you. Who do you rate? I mean, there's obviously other Carlton players I could go. I'm going to throw Aaron Hamill in there as a left of field one.
Originally from the ACT.
That's right, yeah. Now, I'm going to speak I do have other players, non-Carlton players I'm going to mention, but I was always, perturbed might be the word, or saddened by the football journey at Carlton of Aaron Hamill, because there's always been a niggle that we didn't do the right thing by him and essentially forced his hand and made him leave. And of course, he went to St Kilda. He was there, however, in the 99 prelim final. He was wearing the number 4. Very prestigious number at Carlton, as you know. But I always think that's a story of what if. So I just wanted to add that one in there, Troy, before I hear some of your nominations.
That's a great call, Tone. I believe the circumstances were acrimonious, to say the least, the way that Hamill left. And look, he became a terrific player for St Kilda. But as you said, what might have been for the Blues. But the Saints were on the up, and Carlton were on the decline.
Yep. So
in retrospect, he may have made the right move, and he become a real power forward.
Yeah.
For the Saints, he was a terrific player, great man on man.
Yeah.
Good set of hands, and his aggression was off the charts.
Yeah.
But just on Sticks Kernahan, what a career he had with the Blue Baggers. You would have got a lot of joy out of watching him. Coming over from Glenelg, starring in those State of Origin games for South Australia. He was just one of the best. The only knock on him was his kicking, but in saying that, he kicked over 700 goals in his career from 250-odd games.
Yeah.
So not a bad return. He won 3 BNFs for the Blues, and he topped the goal-kicking, Tone 11 times for Carlton.
Extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
As he lined up, on the run in to the kick, he did that thing of just, turning the ball in his hands, turning his ball in the hands. And there were so many heart and mouth moments with Sticks because he was such a great big game player. Although I think the first 2 or 3 games of 93, he could have off his boot won a game against Fitzroy, I think it was. And it was directly in front, went off the side of his boot. It was out. I always get that wrong. There was the first 3 games of 93 for Carlton were decided by less than a kick from memory. But another fact that not even you know, Troy Zantuck, was that Stephen Kernahan was recruited not as a player for Carlton, but as a singer.
Oh, look, I'm blown away by that. Stand by your man.
That's it. Yes.
Wasn't that a tremendous rendition? And
so many others, but it was discovered that perhaps he had more of a talent at football than singing. So,
look, I don't know about that. I don't know. Line ball. So.
All right. I'll take your word for it.
Okay. Look, another fantastic player around the same time, same vintage, from Queensland, Cooperoo in Queensland.
Yes.
This guy found his way to Hawthorn.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, carrying a little bit of weight at the time, but went on to be one of the...
Would you tell him that? Would you tell that to his face?
Not at the moment. No. How much he's tipping the scales at? No, it might be from a distance, in the words of Bette Midler. Yeah. So just some stats on this guy, Tone. 269 games for the Hawks.
Yep.
1,254 goals.
Unbelievable.
Really stamped his authority on the game when he kicked 6 goals in the 86 grand final on Bruce Stool, if you don't mind. This bloke headed the goal kicking for Hawthorn, again like Sticks, from 86 to 96. 3 Colemans, 4 flags, 4 BNFs. He topped the ton 6 times. So he kicked over 100 goals 6 times in his career. And he was very stiff in the 92 Brownlow. That season, he kicked 145 goals.
Oh, my God.
So he was runner-up in the Brownlow. And in that particular season, what an incredible season for Jason Dunstall we're talking about, obviously. Yeah. In 92, that's the year he kicked 17 goals against Richmond at VFL Park.
Wow.
17 goals.
Wow. That is absolutely extraordinary. Who won the 92 Brownlow?
Yeah, the 92 Brownlow was Scotty Wind.
From Footscray.
From Footscray.
I knew it was a Footscray player. I was very confident going in asking that. I just didn't know who had won it. But there you go. He any clues as to the origin of Piggy as the nickname for JD, for Jason Dunstall?
Oh, well, I think it's just join the dots, really, isn't it?
All right. Okay.
Join the dots. That's all I'm prepared to say.
That's all I will say there. I did work with him many years ago, and I always got along really well with him. I did like him.
As far as analysis goes on the game, he's one of the best.
Yeah.
He's one of the best. He calls it as he sees it. He doesn't tiptoe around.
Yep.
And just the technical side of the game, he knows backwards. So I'm always up to listen to Jason Dunstall's comments.
Yes. Yeah. He's and he's still in there. It's a cutthroat game to football commentary in Melbourne, and he's still around. So that says something about him. Can we go? Let's see. I'm looking at another play here. We could go, and this is for purely selfish reasons. Troy Luff. What do you know about him?
Troy Luff?
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting. We are talking about interstaters.
Was he not interstate?
That become VFL champions. Yeah.
Go again.
We're talking about interstaters that become champions of the VFL.
Yeah.
Put that in inverted commas, Tone. Champions.
Right. Okay.
Troy Luff was a very good player. Played for the Swans.
Yeah.
Played over 150 games. Very good player. But we are talking about the absolute best of the best here.
I'm talking, the only reason I bring him up is because in 96, I did a live broadcast of the 96 grand final, and Troy Luff played in that.
Yes,
and, so it's for purely selfish reasons that I bring him up, because I'm not sure if you realise the bottomless pit of puns you can make with the surname Luff. Too much ain't enough Luff. Luff will tear us apart.
Oh,
he was a gift to anybody trying to do an entertaining call of that game, which is the only reason I bring him up.
No, he was a much loved. He was an iconic. He was a bit of a cult figure with the Sydney faithful, Troy Luff.
Yep. Well, now if we go that, maybe not champion, but bona fide champion who did play for Sydney, Paul Kelly.
Oh, absolutely. One of the absolute best, Paul Kelly.
Yeah.
Wore Bob Skilton's number 14, Brownlow medalist. As tough as they come, and a tremendous leader was Paul Kelly, and highly respected amongst his peers. And that's when you knew that you'd arrived on the scene. So Paul Kelly, loved watching him play. Terrific aerialist for his size. He had these sort of telescopic arms, where he was just a tremendous mark, and a never say a die attitude, and one of the best to watch. Paul Kelly, great nomination, that one.
And also a very cool customer. That's what you want in a leader, somebody who's unflappable, and you can't imagine Paul Kelly ever kind of losing his head when all about him others are keeping theirs.
A great call. A leader who led by his actions and not his words. Yeah.
Who else have you got for us, Troy?
Well, I've got our great mate who come over from South Australia. He won the McGarry medal in 1972. He's one of my favourites to watch as a kid. At Arden Street. I would go to Arden Street just to watch this bloke. He arrived at North Melbourne in 1974, stayed there till 82, played 178 games for the Kangas, kicked 444 goals in a glittering career, won the Brownlow in 78. Played in 2 flags. He actually was playing coach for part of the 81 season until Barry Cable took over.
Wow.
He kicked 103 goals in 1982, pretty much, nearing the end of his career. Then he returned to Woodville in 83, and he retired in 1985. The great Malcolm Blight.
Can you tell me about, I had no idea he kept on playing. I always had this idea that he just kind of wandered into coaching, but then somebody like Malcolm Blight doesn't just wander into things. He's just too smart for that, and he just has too much talent. What his playing record at Woodville West Torrens, was it Woodville West Torrens back then?
Woodville, yeah, absolutely, Woodville, and he actually went back in 83, and he kicked a bucket load of goals when he went back, retired in 85, and spent some time in the media. And then his next port of call was coaching the Cats.
Has he ever apologised for that goal that put Carlton out of the finals? Because
wasn't that fantastic? You're talking about 1976 Princes Park after the siren?
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest moments for any other person, bar a Carlton supporter. Magnificent. I love Mike Williamson's commentary, Tony. He said, Blight, he'd have to kick this 85, 90 metres. And he said, that's a big kick. That's a mammoth kick. And then all you hear is the crowd noise. Oh, what an amazing... I could watch that YouTube clip over and over again. And the look on the Carlton supporters' faces behind the goals, where the Robert Heatley stand was just gold.
It's just... I'm not going to... you just can't argue with that. It is such a monumental feat. And, you wonder who else could have carried that off. That's a question without notice, Troy. But who's been capable of that kind of roost?
Oh, the only other player I reckon in that type of situation, after the siren's gone,
was it Windus instead? I'm sorry.
No.
It wasn't.
That's a Carlton supporter myth. That one. That's the one that they throw. That there was the Fremantle doctor had just appeared from nowhere behind Malcolm Blight and just propelled the ball through the big sticks. And that's a lot of rubbish.
All right.
But the only other guy that I would back in from that distance, under that pressure, would be Buddy Franklin.
Good call. Good call.
Mm.
Yep, like that. All right. You'd have to say Malcolm Blight right up there in terms of greatest non-Victorian VFL, AFL players. We're talking, and you're right, we're talking the champions, the best of the best here. Have you got another one for us, Troy?
Yeah, I've actually got another two. And I'd like
Right.
to say in our episode 2, I'm going to concentrate heavily on the Star Tasmanians, the Star New South Welshmen.
God, there's 2 that come to mind, and
Yep.
I'm really.
And we'll talk about those because I've got a lot of Tasmanian friends.
Yep.
And be remiss of me not to mention these guys, probably 3 of the greatest players ever to play in the VFL. But the 2 that I've got are from, one's from Western Australia, and he was the great Graham Polly Farmer.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Now, he was recruited from East Perth, come to Geelong, played over 100 games there, absolutely revolutionised the game with his long-distance handball and his ruck taps to Rover Billy Goggin with a stuff of legend.
Yep.
Made his debut for the Cats in 1962 at the age of 27. So he'd done a really good apprenticeship in the Waffle with East Perth, and then he thought he needed to come over and say to the Victorians, yeah, here I am, I can play. He played in that momentous 63 flag for the Cats, and he captained them from 65 to 67, won the BNF twice, I believe, and he won 2 Sandover medals before he come over in 56 and 60, and he also coached Geelong in the mid-70s. So the resume of Graham Polly Farmer, one of the best.
The Sandover medal, of course, won by Sid Jackson, who came over from WA to play for Carlton.
Another tremendous player. What a great nomination, Tone.
Thank you. Now, it was explained to me during the week, and I found this really interesting. I'd love to know how Polly Farmer and Billy Goggin would have gone had this been the case. But I found this was a really interesting, one of those things you may not have known about, but it definitely has had an impact on the game. That being 2 boundary umpires, Troy. That compressing the setup time that a ruckman and a rover have to get to the throw in, because if you've got the boundary umpire way over there, he's got to pick up, he's got to run and he's got to
That's right.
And in that time, the rover and the ruckman maybe have a bit of time to either discuss what set play that they've been practicing all week that they're going to do at the throw in. And then you've got other players who have time to actually get to the contest as well. You essentially halve that time when you have double the amount of boundary umpires, and that has an effect on the game. That's what I was told. What do you?
Look, that does apply, Tone. But when you've got players the calibre of Farmer and Goggin, the relationship they had was nearly telepathic.
Right.
So it was just an incredible, I suppose, symbiosis between the 2 of them.
Yeah.
Which probably we've never seen the like of again because of their incredible talents of knowing where to run to, where to tap it, where the tap actually was going to. Goggin would know that, whether it had come over the top or to the front or to the side. It was just, I've watched replays of Goggin and Farmer, and it's just poetry in motion.
Magnificent. And what an adornment to our game. I'm going to throw one in, and we'll just discuss him quickly before you
sure.
last non-Victorian nomination. I think he's a bit underrated, but you can disagree with that and maybe say that he got the props he deserved. Shane Crawford started off from originally New South Wales. I think he was a lot harder than, I remember watching him play thinking, bit of a pretty boy. He loves to kind of muck around, but he could get in and under, and he didn't mind putting his head over the ball. And he had a pretty stellar career.
Oh, incredible career, Tone. And, the naysayers that say that Shane Crawford wasn't hard at it, well, they haven't watched too many Hawthorn games, let me tell you.
Yeah.
He put his head over. He was a very courageous player, very talented, and led by example. As you said, he had that, that pretty boy image.
Yeah.
But he was as tough as nails when the siren was sounded. Don't worry about that. Brownlow medalist, best and fairest winner at Hawthorn, 300 games, premiership at the end of his career, which was befitting for all the hard yards that he did.
Yep.
No, Shane Crawford, a terrific nomination. I think Shane was from Finley in New South Wales, where I also believe Jumping Jack Hawkins and Tom Hawkins, the same town.
Geez,
so,
yeah, AFL recruiters, keep an eye on that place. All right, the last one that you're going to mention then, and we'll wrap up after this, but I'm very keen to hear your last nomination in part one of our discussion about non-Victorian players in the VFL AFL. Who have you got, Troy?
Well, I may have left the best to last. Obviously, none of us would have seen this guy play, but his record speaks volumes. And I'm talking about Hayden Bunton.
Aha. Yep.
And Hayden Bunton, he was born in Albury, so just over the border.
Yep.
From Victoria, so he qualifies. He was recruited from Albury Rovers, a famous club in that particular area. He arrived at Fitzroy in 1931. He played 119 games and try this on for size, Tone. Won 31, 32 and 35 Brownlow medals, triple Brownlow medalist.
Wow.
And was runner-up in 1934.
Wow.
So nearly, possibly could have won 4, but had 3 on his resume. Then, incredibly, he went to Western Australia after he'd won 3 Brownlows. He played there from 1938 to 41. He only played 72 games there, but he won 3 Sandover medals in 72 games. He won the 38, 39 and 41 Sandover medals. He won 3 best and fairest. This is an incredible stat in such a short time frame. But the thing about Hayden Bunton was he also served his country. He was in the army service in World War II. And tragically, he was killed in a road accident at Gawler in South Australia at the age of 44. So,
wow. I've been to Gawler many times. That's extraordinary. And was that while
44.
serving with the army, Troy?
No, he was killed in a road accident. He saw army service.
Yep, he'd been discharged.
Yep. Yeah, and 1955 that took place.
That is, that's a footballing biography with almost no equal.
It's just unfortunate, Tone, that there was no, video or clips or just an incredible resume, as you said, 3 Brownlows, 3 Sandovers.
Yeah. In
such a compacted amount of time.
Yeah. And service to his country. That's incredible. You can understand
service to his country. Yeah.
Well, you can understand why Fitzroy supporters and I'm saying Fitzroy rather than Brisbane supporters here, but Fitzroy really, really revere that man. So you can understand that. Thank you for pointing that out because I knew the name. I knew it was legendary, but I didn't know why. I got a much better sense of that now, thanks to you, Troy.
That's great, Tone. And as I said, next week in part 2, we'll zero in on our Tasmanian champs, New South Wales champs, and a few more WA and South Australian champs.
I'm really looking forward to your dissection of, as I said, there's just one head and shoulders Tasmanian, and there's backed up. Number 2 is no slouch either, so I'm really looking forward to that. And we've barely scratched the surface in the Northern Territory as well, let's be honest. I'm really looking forward to part 2 of our chat when we discuss best non-Victorian players in the VFL, AFL. Troy Zantuck, it goes with that. So magnificent work as always.
Thank you very much, Tony. It's a pleasure doing the podcast with you and also the radio on 3AW. Really enjoying that as well.
Which you can hear every Friday morning. I broadcast from midnight and Troy joins us on the show. And with call bait, I'm going to call it. You put it out, you set them up and callers knock them down. And it's a great segment and it's great to have you on the show. So that's Friday from midnight on 3AW with the great Troy Zantuck and myself. We're going to be back next week here on Isolation TV. I've been Tony Moakler. I plan on being so next week as well. And we will catch you then.